That's me. My name is Bill. I've been an athlete for many years. I got involved in managing the officials program about 7 years ago. Became a regional coordinator of officials for the Mideast region. That's Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, Illinois, and Kentucky. So I know the rules pretty cold. There's not much. I haven't read about 100 times in the rule book, which is about that thick. So I can answer all your questions. We're going to go through them. We're here for a couple different reasons. The number one thing is we want everybody to understand why the rules are in place, why it's important, why we're a professional sport. We consider ourselves professionals when we're on the course because we don't want accidents to happen. We want fair play amongst our peers. We want to do the best we can as athletes. I'm also a certified race director with USA Triathlon. I run about 5 races. I've got 2 races in Michigan, the Grand Haven Triathlon and Bear Lake, which I'm co-race director with, 2 very fine races. I'm a co-race director for the race in Maysville. The Buffalo Trails, which I'll plug at the end because I've got a discount code for everybody here. We are fellow triathletes. Most of us are former triathletes or active triathletes. There are a few individuals that have never been in the sport. They're runners, they're swimmers, they're something like that, and they wanted to get involved. But most of us, if we're not competing, we're officiating. And I always like to share that with athletes because the first thing we usually get is, well, you don't know what it's like to be out there. You shouldn't have written this penalty. You don't know what I go through out in the field. Yeah, we do. We've been out there many times ourselves. I've probably done, I don't know, 500, 600 triathlons over a 25-year period. So yeah, I've been out there an awful lot. We're very passionate about the sport. We want the sport to be as clean and professional as we can possibly get it. What officials do is we're here for a real 3-pronged approach, and if you race WTC venues, Ironman, or if you race ITU venues, which are the world organization, there's 5 or 6 ITU venues. Hi, welcome. Yeah, come on in, have a seat. You'll understand that our rule set is a little different. We structure USA Triathlon a little differently. Let me preface all this, and I don't have a slide for this, but we're all under ITU. The International Triathlon Union is the world governing body. We have to be under ITU if we want to send people to the Olympics, okay? So we're all under ITU. Under ITU, there's separate divisions. The United States happens to have USA Triathlon. So because we're a separate sanctioning organization, sanctioned by Congress, we have our own rule set and we have our own way of doing things that is different than ITU, that is different from the World Triathlon Corporation. So if you happen to race an ITU race or a WTC race, the rules are going to be a little different. You might be a little confused, and we get that from time to time. What we do is a little different from those organizations because we enforce the rules as they apply during the race. Before the race, we will answer any questions you've got. We're your best friends. We're not your coaches. We don't know how much electrolytes you should take in before the race, but we don't like to answer questions specific that a race director should be answering, like, okay, talk to me about the course, Mr. Official. When I get out 12 miles, what do I expect? I don't know and I don't care, because race directors have a nasty habit of changing the course at the last minute, and the last thing I want you to do is say, an official told me to turn right when I should have turned left. So we don't do that. We don't give you direction at all, but we can tell you what the rules are, so we're there for the rules. Once the race starts, we don't speak. We're not allowed to speak. Because if I give you help verbally, then I've just committed the worst sin in the triathlon universe of USAT. I've helped one athlete without helping the rest of the athletes, and that's unfair. So we don't speak. We don't tell you you're getting a penalty. We don't warn you. The only time we would ever do that is if an extraordinary circumstance developed, like did at Beach to Battleship 2 years ago, when I was following an athlete on Interstate 40, the busiest highway in the United States, coned one lane, shut off to the cyclists. He wasn't paying attention and hit a cone, flipped over his bike, and landed in the traffic lane. So I had to jump off the motorcycle and stop traffic before they ran over him, because they were going to do that. He was laying in the road like this, and you had cars passing his outstretched hand inches from his hand, because people had to get where they want to go. So unless an extraordinary circumstance develops, your USAT officials don't speak to you during the race. We try to enable the event to be fair and equitable so that everybody that's participating can get a good shot at doing what they came to do, and that's enjoying the race. We have to understand that some people are there for different reasons. Some people are there because they might be a mom with 12 kids and this is her one day to enjoy herself. We understand that. They might be a tuned athlete who wants to go to the Olympics someday and they're just really using this race to tune up for that. Might be an age grouper that's very serious about competition and wants to be ranked very highly in USAT National. So we have a smattering of individuals. To respect everybody, all we can do is apply the rules as best we can apply the rules. So that's what we're there for. An official will never overturn a penalty simply because an athlete objects to the penalty. We get that all the time. All the time. After the race is over, I'm standing at the penalty board and an athlete walks up to me and says, I got a penalty and I don't want it. That's very nice. I got a speeding ticket and I don't want it either. But I couldn't, the police officer didn't want to listen to me when I told him that. Neither did the judge. We don't turn over or turn penalties simply because they exist. If an official wrote you a penalty, we don't get paid by the penalty. We write you a penalty because you breached a USAT rule infraction. It is our responsibilities as athletes to know the rules. It's like if you were Michael Jordan and you were on a court, you couldn't say if you got a foul penalty, geez, I didn't know that I couldn't grab the ball and run down the court without dribbling it. Where's that in the rules? You're supposed to know that as an athlete. So we can't offer guidance or course direction during competition. That's unfair. We get that all the time. Which way do I go? We won't say anything. I'll just totally ignore that athlete. And if I was crazy enough to say this way and it was the wrong way, then the whole race is breached because I gave somebody assistance and I told them to go the wrong way. Not to offer assistance or help during competition, as I told you, unless extraordinary circumstances prevail. So keep that in mind. Now, if you overview the penalties in general, I want you to pay attention to this slide because this is how it works. USAT competitive rules are enforced to ensure integrity and fairness across the playing field on a very, very, very even basis by applying variable time penalties as follows. If you happen to break a rule and a USAT official witnesses it, or a race director witnesses it, or a course marshal appointed by a race director witnesses it, and comes to an official and says, we want this person penalized, your first violation is going to be a time penalty. For a sprint in an international class, formerly Olympic distance, that's going to be 2 minutes added to your time for your first penalty. Not the end of the world. So when a person comes up to me and says, I can't go to work tomorrow because you've embarrassed me, I got this penalty, I said, really, 2 minutes, and you can't go to work tomorrow. Boy, I'm sorry to hear that. For the first violation is a time penalty of 2 minutes for your class of race that you typically race. For a half iron distance or more, it's 4 minutes. For an ultra distance, it's going to be 6 minutes. The second penalty, you double the first time penalty. So if you're doing a sprint or an Olympic class, now called an international, your second penalty is going to be an additional 4 minutes. So you've got 6 minutes added to your time. You get a third penalty, you're automatically disqualified. It doesn't mean you have to put your tail between your legs, go home, and not enjoy the race. It just means you're not in the rankings. As far as USAT triathlon is concerned, you were never at that race. That's really the way it works. Just like if you were to not wear a helmet on the bike. Automatic disqualification, you're not in the race. That way if you get hurt, the number one thing that's going to say is, I don't know, because this athlete wasn't officially in the race because they weren't wearing a helmet. So the third violation, disqualification. You can probably be allowed to continue the race, but you're removed from rankings and awards. Race directors are not supposed to even give you any rankings. So, well, just tell me what my time is. You're not even supposed to be in the system. You were there as a participatory candidate at that point if you are disqualified. So just keep that in mind. Okay, if you receive a penalty, the competition continues. We never pause competition due to a penalty. Can you imagine if Michael Jordan got a penalty, they had to stop play, bring in the commissioner of the National Basketball Association to conference, what are we going to do now? Jordan just got a penalty. No, the competition just continues. Same with us. You might not even know you got a penalty if you don't know the rules and you weren't noticing that an official was next to you writing a penalty on the motorcycle, because most of them happen on the bike, and we'll talk about that. You're not being accused of cheating if you get a penalty. I hear that more than anything else. People come up to me afterward and say, I'm not a cheater, I don't deserve this. I'm sure you're not a cheater, but you broke a USAT rule, okay? That's just the way it goes. This guy, speaking of Michael Jordan, had 2,783 technical fouls in his career. Not even personal, for technical fouls. That's serious. 2,783, because he played the game and he played it to win. He got 2,783 technical fouls in his career. I don't remember one person coming up to him and saying, well, you cheater, Jordan. If they did, I wouldn't want to do it. I met him one time, and he's like 8 times my size. And he's pretty buff even to this day. Doesn't mean he was a cheater. It meant that during the course of play, he played the game, he played it hard, and he incurred penalties or fouls. That's what it means. So we all get penalties. I probably got, I don't know, in my course of USAT triathlon competition, 10 penalties, 15 penalties. I lost track because I play to win, and I sometimes draft when I don't mean to, and I sometimes do things I don't mean to. So the harder you compete, the more congested the course is, it can happen. We'll talk about when we will write and when we won't write a penalty and what that means. But I want you to keep that in mind and spread that to the fellow athletes. If this guy can get 2,783 technical fouls in his career, getting a couple penalties in your career as a triathlete is really not that big of a deal. And I still would consider Michael Jordan pretty much of a superstar. I think you'd agree with me. So what to expect? Unlike WTC or ITU, USAT official will never blow a whistle. You do get that in the other 2 certifying bodies. They'll blow a whistle and flash a card and say, you know, you got a warning or you're disqualified. USAT officials are not allowed to do that. We're silent observers. So all we do is write the penalties. We don't engage in conversation either. We don't ever talk to you. ITU is very different. They'll get right in your face and tell you what to do and how to do it. And then they scream at you. It's a very different organization, not USA Triathlon. We step back from that role considerably and let you enjoy your day. So please don't ask USAT official for directions or assistance during competition. We're all expected to know the rules. I'll tell you where to get them, and we're going to go over them and pretty much in detail here so that you can really have a better understanding when you leave here exactly what the rules are and how they apply. And there's been a few subtle changes in the last couple of years. We're seeing more and more of this as people get more people come into the sport. Crowding is a little more of an issue. People get a little more determined as they get a little longer in the tooth in the sport. We're seeing a lot more unsportsmanlike conduct, and we're very aware of that and attuned to it. So I know nobody in this room would ever have unsportsmanlike conduct, but you have to watch your temper. We really are keen on penalizing or disqualifying or banning from the sport anybody who has heinous violations of this. You have to watch your language, act professional, the volunteers, fellow athletes, race managements, officials, no physical violence. Poor behavior has its consequences. So try to be sportsmanlike in everything you do. Real important. We look at that even harder every year as more and more things happen. We really want you to be cautious on the roadways. What I'm seeing too as races get more congested is you got to remember, unless you're in Muncie, where the governor's closed Route 35 to traffic, you're on a shared road with public traffic. You have to be very conditioned in your mind that you are there with cars that are a lot bigger than you, and some of them don't care. Again, they're trying to get to Walmart for the sale, they're trying to get to church, marketing, wherever they're going, and they're very upset that there's police and bicyclists on the road in number. They don't think it's cool, many of them. They think it's a hassle. So they got a little bit of an attitude behind the wheel, so just be careful of that. You have to share the road, and you can't assume the right-of-way. I see more and more where I'm screamed at as an official, you know, a 200-pound official with a 300-pound driver on a 600-pound motorcycle. We really can't stop on a dime or get out of your way. And athletes will say, get out of my way, move. Sometimes we can't. That bike is very hard to control, so we all have to share the road because accidents can and do happen. These are large motorcycles. This is actually, it's hard to see him, but that's our commissioner of officials, Charlie Crawford, right there, about to get on a motorcycle. Al Hennigan, one of the other regional coordinators, standing next to him. These are a typical USAT motorcycle. Big, large bikes with you know, adults on them, and some of the riders can be, some of the drivers of these bikes can be 300 pounds. So we're there to observe the rules and to look at the course. So just be aware that we're out there as well. And more officials depending on the size of the race. Okay, let's talk a little bit about where it all starts, transition. When you look at transition, when we take a break, we're going to talk a little bit about out there, but I got a picture from the previous year here we can look at. You need to keep all your gear in your designated space. The number one thing that happens is bad behavior out in the course starts in transition. The more people that are added to the sport, there's only so much room. There's a way to set up, we're going to talk about in transition, just to be professional, to be courteous to your fellow athletes. There's a way you should be setting up transition. If you're assigned a space, rack your bike so the bike is wheeled down in your designated spot. There's a tendency to believe in triathlon that if the bar comes across like this and your bike is here, you own everything on both sides of the rack, and you don't. You are required by USAT rule to address your bike from the downwheel side, and you only own that side. You're not to go over to the other side of the rack, and I'll show you why in a minute, because it's just too congested. We'll show some really poor behavior there. I got a great picture of a guy that's really behaving poorly. The gear, your triathlon stuff, goes down on the wheel side of your bike. The only thing ever under the raised wheel should be storage. You're allowed to put your storage under your raised wheel. You never address your bike from the raised wheel side. Don't pull it out from the raised wheel side. Don't even go over there. There's just too many people, and we're trying to get you separated, and I'll show you why that is. So be aware of the mount dismount line. It is not a dismount penalty. It's an entering and exiting penalty. An illegal dismount is where you stop in the middle of the road because your chain fell off, stick your butt out in the road, and try to put your chain back on when traffic and other bikes are trying to get back to you. Entering and exiting is you're supposed to stay within the confines of transition before you go in and out, and enter and exit the same way you went in and out. So if you cross that dismount line, it can be a penalty if the race director wants that line enforced. A USAT official will never stand at that line. That's not our job. That's a race director's call. This is a very typical poor behavior scenario. I see this in just about every triathlon I go to. It's usually your 40-something guy who has had a rough day at work for the last 20 years, and he's going to take his share of space because, by God, it's his day. And he's going to go on the end of the rack, and he's going to set up a little stool. It's usually a little foot bath. I'm surprised this guy doesn't have a foot bath because they want to get the dirt off their feet. I've seen things you wouldn't believe on the ends of these racks. I've seen portable showers. I've seen those folding chairs with the feet up. I've seen beer coolers with beer and ice in them. This is getting to the point now where I wouldn't be surprised if race directors start disqualifying for this, because it's heinous behavior. That's his bike right there, obviously, but he should have everything racked on this front wheel and nothing out in the end of the rack. He's out here way past the rack, sitting on a little stool, just having a grand old time. By that thinking, then everyone should be able to do that. Not just him. So, and his excuse was, well, I should get a gold star because I'm giving more room to the other athletes. That's a very poor excuse. That's like me doing 95 on the highway in the passing lane and telling the arresting officer I should get a gold star because I wasn't tying up the road. I was trying to move down the road faster. That doesn't fly. We don't allow that. So set up in the aisle or at the racks is not allowed. There's no stools, water basins, beer coolers, portable showers, easy chairs, refrigerators, any other large appliances. No family members or assistants, no pets, and no glass. I see everything but glass. People have gotten much better with glass. I saw one Tropicana orange juice glass container 3 years ago in Fishers, Indiana on a paved parking lot, and absolutely it fell and broke and somebody stepped on it within seconds. And it's like a magnet to your foot, and it was 16 stitches. And that's just, we don't allow glass anywhere, anytime, anywhere near. That's an automatic disqualification, so keep that in mind. Shouldn't be any glass out there anyway. No family members or assistants. That's a real hard rule unless it's a participatory triathlon, and that's got to be mentioned in the sanction. Then anything goes. Participatory triathlon, I don't care. You can use a motorcycle on the course. It's not really a ranking situation at that point. You're not alone. So there's not enough space for everyone to spread out or have an entourage in transition. So no one's allowed to do it. It can be very dangerous. So again, unless it's, this is a competitive race, not a family rally, we have to keep that in mind, and that kind of behavior is just really heinous, and we don't allow it. This was from a couple years ago. Same setup as we got out here. You'll notice that the first bike is wheel up, second bike is wheel down. That's what you want. You want a staggered racking situation. Wheel up, wheel down, wheel up, wheel down, so that you're spreading people out. I'm going to address that bike from that side. The guy next to me is going to be on the other side. Then by the time the other guy comes around to my side, we're 2 bikes apart. And that's the key. That's what you want. You should tell, I do, when I'm an athlete, I tell my fellow competitors, what are you racking the same way I am? You're supposed to be over there. That way we have more room. I mean, it only makes sense. It's more professional. Towel down on your wheel down side. We'll talk about that out here in detail. but you're supposed to address your bike from the front with all your stuff that you're going to use that transition area for right there at the front wheel side. Usually you put a little towel down, put your wheel over the towel, split the towel, put your shoes, put whatever you got, helmet on the front bars, perfect. And that's the way transition should be set up. The more people that enter this sport, the more we're going to have to enforce this, whether or not the racking is marked. If you're range racking 113 to 123, you should automatically do that anyway to be professional. You want to see a professional setup, and I'm going to do this year, I swear to you. I'm going to take a picture of a collegiate rack that has a coach there. Unbelievable. Looks like the academy. It's just unbelievable. That's the way transition should be set up. So we have to be a little more vigilant on how we're setting up transition. All right, let's talk about moving out onto the swim. The most important thing to a race director is getting you guys out of the water. When I do my triathlon in St. Augustine, the St. Augustine Triathlon, and it's an open ocean swim, my day ends when my last athlete gets out of the water. That's when my heart starts beating again, because I don't have to worry about somebody drowning. So most race directors are less concerned about you hurting yourself on the bike or the run, way more concerned about you getting out of the water. So we keep a real good handle on the water in this sport. Wetsuits are allowed at temperatures up to 78 degrees. 78.1 to 84, we're going to allow you to wear a wetsuit. That means you're disqualified. You're too hot, and we don't want anything happening. So you're allowed to do it. It's just that you're not in the race. You're having a fun day. It's a participatory race for you at that point. You're out of the race. Above 84 degrees, you cannot get in the water with a wetsuit on. Now, at that point, it's dangerous, and we're not going to allow that at all. So a lot of people who use a wetsuit for buoyancy, they will show up and they will say, I don't care, disqualify me, I have to wear my wetsuit. It's 79-degree water temperature, I'm going to wear it. Just make sure you drink a lot of fluids, because you can't tell you're sweating your head off in 81-degree water in a wetsuit, and you're sweating your head off. So that's the danger there. You must wear a swim cap if it's an open water swim. Absolutely, positively, no one gets in the water without a swim cap in an open water swim, and please don't take that swim cap off, because if we find, as a race director I'm speaking now, a swim cap floating in open water, we are absolutely panicked. There's going to be sheriffs, lifeguards, everything else involved looking for that body. So don't do that. Please come out of the water with your cap on. Open water swims, race directors, absolutely mandatory. It's a breach of sanction. We have to have a swim cap on everybody, and we want to make sure there's no caps in the water. Pool swims, we don't care. It's up to the race director. If you want to do a pool swim, you don't have to wear a swim cap. It's totally up to the race director whether or not he or she wants to do that. Now, you may rest by holding onto a boat or buoy, not make any forward progress. So if you grab a boat and he or she starts paddling forward, you can be disqualified. That's forward progress that you're not making on your own. Can you wear gloves on your hand? Does anybody know? I see a no. Why is that? You're right.
You're going to get help.
If you're wearing gloves, you're increasing your catching of water probability ratio. That's how you most make, if you're a good swimmer, you should make most of your progress with your hands, not your feet. So if you wear gloves, you're catching more water. And that's the theory. So we don't allow gloves unless you have a note from your doctor that says you have serious Raynaud's syndrome. Then we'll allow gloves in the water. I'm a vascular tech as well, so Raynaud's, you're going to have an actual Raynaud's syndrome to get that. Can you wear booties, like rubber booties? Can you wear those? You can. Why is that? You're very good. No, but that's a good thought. The reason is because you're blunting your foot. You're taking off the blade of your foot. You're actually hindering your progress by wearing those. So yes, neoprene booties you can wear, or those, what are they called? The ones that have the little finger, I can't remember what they're called.
Vibrams?
Yes, thank you. You can wear those, absolutely. You can wear shoes if you want to. Doesn't matter. We don't worry about them on the feet. On the hands, no, not unless you have a note from your doctor with Raynaud's. Can you stand on the bottom and rest? Yes, because you're not making forward progress. If the water, like in Columbus, Ohio at Elm Creek, is only this deep, okay, are you allowed to walk forward in that water? Why not? That's what I used to think. You can only make forward progress illegal if it's an animate object like a boat or a buoy. The bottom is free play for USA Triathlon rules. You can use the bottom for, the rules actually say other than the bottom. That's how the rules start. Other than the bottom, you may not make forward progress by any animate or inanimate object other than the bottom. So pros always come up to me and say, are you going to make an announcement that there's no dolphin diving? No, this is USAT Triathlon, it's not ITU. You can dolphin dive the whole way if you want, if it's shallow water. You can run the whole way if you want. And the theory is, if you're in this deep of water and you want to run, I'll beat you every time swimming. You can't run in water this deep. So if you want to wade the swim, you can absolutely do that. 90% of all the penalties happen on the bike. 90%. Anybody here watch the Tour de France? No? Everybody. See, because USA Triathlon is not the Tour de France, and that's where people get confused. They watch the Tour de France, they see all these professional cyclists in pelotons, passing musette bags back and forth and inches from off other people's bumper, and they want to do that. We are not allowed as officials to say we can't do that because it's a safety violation, but it does drive to that. We're not there for your safety. USAT officials are not there for safety. That's what the police and everybody else are there for. We're there for the rules. However, yes, if you're 2 inches from my bumper and I hit the brakes for some reason, you're going to hit me. That's why we don't want to do that. In a professional peloton, you wouldn't know this by looking at me, but I used to be a professional cyclist. I lived in France, and I rode for No Elf back in the early 80s. And yes, we would eat while we were doing 25 miles an hour on the bike, standing up. We'd be inches, because I knew that the professional athlete in front of me at 30 miles an hour on the bike wasn't going to hit his brakes, not even on a downhill. We tend to do that. We'll go into a corner and hit the brakes. So somebody's going to come right up on your rear end and they're going to hit you. So pay attention to what's going on here. First thing we do is we look for unusual bikes in transition. And we always see them. We always see unusual bikes in transition. Not to this extent, but I wouldn't be surprised. Bicycles must have front and rear brakes if they were designed to have front and rear brakes. Most bikes today were designed to have front and rear brakes. So if you're missing front brakes, you're disqualified. Can't go off the course with a bike with no front brakes if the bike was designed to have it. Is anybody here familiar with a track bike for track racing? Okay, very illegal in USA Triathlon. First of all, it's direct drive. You can't freewheel that rear wheel. When the rear wheel's moving, the pedals are moving. And the argument I always get is, well, I do have a brake, because track bikes don't have brakes. I do have a brake. When I stop pedaling, that's my brake. No, it's not a brake. It doesn't work that way. So we have to have front and rear brakes. Nothing unusual. Obviously, these would be heinously unusual. These wouldn't even pass a dispensation on sanction like a baby carrier would for a special dispensation for like a muscular dystrophy ride or something like that. We'll do that. We're not going to do bikes like this. No recumbents. I get that all the time from the guys that love their recumbents and they want to ride their recumbents in triathlon competition. We do not allow that. They are not allowed out in the course. As a race director in Grand Haven, I got a guy that's, I'm thinking he's going to sue me because I won't allow him out in the course. And I can't do that to my other athletes. These guys are low. They have a little flag. They can't see you. You may not be able to see them. You're twice their speed. You're twice as nimble. Recumbents don't. They can't climb worth a darn. And you're not going to get, I don't want those out on my course as a race director. We don't allow them as officials. Recumbents are not allowed out there, even with special dispensation. No tandems unless there's a dispensation for it. No large carriers or other additions to the bike. Nothing like these two guys there. So we do look for that in transition. And if there's something totally unusual, we're not going to allow. We're not going to allow anything that looks like it's going to be a hazard out there, anything that doesn't have brakes, and any recumbents. It is your responsibility, although we try to put this on the race director, to have your bar ends completely plugged. I should have had the bar end slide up there. As a race director, when we get certified, they make us look at the x-ray of the poor unfortunate guy that went over his handlebars and he didn't have plugs in, the drop bars. He didn't have plugs in, and that's a round knife, and it went in and pierced his liver. And the paramedics took him to the hospital with the handlebars in his liver and took a picture of that. We don't allow you out in the course. with bar ends. It's an automatic disqualification. Race directors are supposed to have people there with bar ends, but it starts with you, because it really comes down to the athlete. I don't know why, but when I raced drop bars, every single time I'd get it out of the car, my handlebars would be open. I don't know where it went from the garage to there, but it always fell out. So I started carrying extras. Race directors should have some extras. Bike support should have extras. Aero bars we're not worried about. Usually there's no plugs in those. But if there are, we have to make sure that they are plugged. You can't just use tape. We're not worried about the unraveling of your handlebar tape. We're worried about the round knife. We want to blunt that off so that you get a bruise rather than a pierce of something you might need later, like a liver or a spleen. So we want the worst we can do is maybe a quarter with some black electrical tape to blunt that off. Or bottle end would work with some tape, but bar ends are really important. I'm sure you probably think you know what drafting is. If you've not seen this presentation before, I'm probably going to startle you on what drafting really is, because people don't quite understand what drafting means in USA Triathlon and how we enforce it as officials, and it's very important. The drafting zone is 7 meters. That's roughly 3 bike lengths. That's a long way, and it's what the official thinks it is. Of all the things that you can object to, and we'll talk about objecting to penalties later, you can't object to a drafting penalty. That is not objectionable. Not objectionable at all. It is an official's call. It's our perspective, and you can't say, no, I wasn't drafting. You're in the zone. We're looking at you from the side. If we say that's 2 bike lengths, it's 2 bike lengths. You might think it's 4. So we always say err on the side of caution. You have to stay out of the 7-meter zone, which is 3 bike lengths by 2 meters wide. 2 meters wide is not as far as you think. It's roughly a lane once you get the bikes involved. You got 15 seconds to get in or out of that zone, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So 3 bike lengths behind the cyclist in front of you is the drafting zone. Now, here's where it gets interesting. So you're going to pass. We all want to pass. You pass another athlete, you pierce that zone, you've got 15 seconds to move through the zone. This whole rule is intended to keep you right and keep the flow of traffic moving through. Anybody here drive I-71, you know what I'm talking about. Don't you just love when you're trying to get somewhere and somebody's driving 55 miles an hour in the passing lane? Drives you insane. That drives all other accidents on the highway. You can ask a state patrol officer. More accidents because some goofball is in the left-hand lane driving 55 miles an hour and people have to pass them on the right. They're upset. They don't check their mirror. Boom. You know, that's what happens every time. Same thing happens in triathlon. So we're very hard on positioning. We'll talk that later. So you pierce the zone from the rear. You got 15 seconds to make that pass. You have been passed when your front tire, the leading edge of your front tire, passes the leading edge of the person you're passing's front tire. That's considered a pass. So the official's going to be over here taking a look at everything. When this meets this person has been passed. It's now their obligation to drop back before repassing. We'll talk about all this. We'll talk about all this. Because if you're passed, you must move back completely out of the athlete's zone, minimum of 3 bike lengths, 7 meters, before you attempt to repass. That makes sure that anybody faster than you has a chance to get past. Because I know we all believe that we're the fastest things out there than a silver bullet. Believe it or not, there's probably people faster than us in the room. And you know, if your average speed is 22 and somebody's average speed is 29, there's a big difference on a bike. So we want this to happen so that people can continue to go around clusters and we don't start stacking people up. So you are required, if passed, to drop back out of the zone before attempting the repass. That's called an overtaken penalty. You were overtaken, but you didn't accept the overtaken. You stayed within 3 bike lengths, and happens all the time with a egotistical male rider who's passed by a female. Who does she think she is? I'm going to pass her right back, right then and there, without dropping out of the zone and attempting the repass. Now, I just picked on the men. Females tend to like to hang way out on the left-hand side because they're so fast that they don't have to get right. I hear that all the time. It's true. I have some very toned, fast females, and they are fast. I wouldn't want to race them, but they're not that fast. There's other people that are going to pass them. You can't stay out to the left-hand side. And they say, well, why should I have to keep going like this? Because we want to keep that left-hand lane as clear as possible so we don't have problems. This is where people really get screwed up. Okay, we talked about all this. Now let's talk about how the zone works. It's a one-way street. Very, very important for you to understand that. If you enter the zone from the rear, which means you're behind the cyclist you're going to pass, he or she's got a 7-meter zone. You've just breached that zone, you entered it from the rear, you must exit to the front. There's no backing off. There's no backing off. We see that all the time, and it's a drafting penalty. And it'll read just like this. Athlete number 102 on a black Kestrel wearing a green helmet approached from the rear, approached to within 1 bike length, noticed official, hit brakes, exit rear. Because that's the safety thing. There's an official. I'm going to back up. Now, if you are intending to pass, the best thing you can do is pass. You can't enter the zone, change your mind, and back out. What did I say about the drafting zone breach? Once this front tire enters the zone, you're in the zone. Once this front tire planes this front tire, you've completely passed. So you've got 15 seconds to get to this point. That's why the official's over here taking a good look at that and looking at this front tire and looking at his or her stopwatch. Now, you do this and you get to here, and this person says, hey, I'm about to be passed. If they hit the gas and they take off, they can force a penalty on you. So you have to be very confident of your pass. Legally so. Until this wheel breaches this wheel's zone plane, you have not passed this rider. So if you come up to here and this person takes off or you run out of gas, you just didn't have it in the gas tank, it is your illness and your penalty. So be aware of that. This rule also says that if you enter the zone from the front, you must exit to the rear. What does that mean? It means you've just been passed. You've entered the zone from the front, we're overtaken, you must be so this person has a one-way zone that way. Has to go that way. That's the whole thing is intended to keep that passing lane clear. So remember, this is a one-way street. It's the most important thing I can share with you today. 3 bike lengths. Pierce it. 15 seconds to pass. Pass only on the left, never on the right, unless there's absolutely, positively nothing you can do. I want to be very clear on that. If you're on a 2-lane road and you got traffic coming at you, I don't want you to say, well, the official told me I had to pull out into oncoming traffic because I had to pass on the left. That's not what we're saying. Not at all. If you can pass on the left, you absolutely must pass on the left. If you decide that you can only pass on the right, you may or may not get a penalty. I can guarantee you that if this person was hanging in the left-hand lane, they are going to get a blocking penalty. Guaranteed. Absolutely guaranteed. That's a blocking penalty. If you have to pass on the right, that person's getting a blocking penalty. Whether or not you get a penalty for passing on the right depends on the circumstances of the situation. A lot of oncoming traffic, this person's hanging here, I'm not going to penalize you for passing on the right. You had no choice. No oncoming traffic, plenty of room in the lane. You didn't pass on the left, you're probably going to get a penalty, even though this person is still going to get a blocking penalty. Now, if there's no rider here, and this person is solo, and they're just hanging out in the left-hand lane having a great time, that's a position penalty. And we do absolutely penalize for that in a big way, because I agree with our commissioner. This drives all the other penalties. Somebody sitting out in the left-hand lane, just like I-71, having a great time, because after all, it's their road, and they paid hard tax money for it, and they're going to use it the way they want to use it. It's not the way USA Triathlon's designed to be. So that's the drafting zone. Now, there's many athletes out there, so ride on the far right of the road and keep the left portion as clean as you can, unless you're at the Chicago Triathlon, when it's exactly the reversed. Chicago Triathlon is Lakeshore Drive. They 4 lanes each direction. The 2 inside lanes are for the bikes. They cone them off. So we tell people stay left, pass right. We want you against that guardrail. That's one of the few triathlons in the world that'll do that, and they will make that announcement in advance. Everybody else, just like normal road procedure, stay right, pass left, so you don't create that blocking penalty. Real important for you to understand that. However, safety first. Now, what would happen, this is real important, and we understand this. What if you're at the Naperville Triathlon in Naperville, Illinois, and you've got 4,632 sprint athletes on a 6.5 mile multi-loop course? All right? Think about that. 6,000 cyclists on like a 6-mile course. Do you think there's any way you can't draft? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So it's the onus of the race director to say, you know what? This is more of a participatory race because everyone's drafting. Everyone has to draft. So the point I'm trying to make is, if you have no option, we're not going to write a penalty. There's no way. We're going to be very fair about that. So don't worry about that. So when you come to an official and say, I don't deserve that penalty, I had no option, if they wrote a penalty, you had an option. From their perspective, you had an option and you can't challenge it. We'll talk about challenging penalties and the procedure for that, but you don't want to waste your time challenging a drafting penalty, because the commissioner will take your $100 and write you back one line saying you can't challenge a drafting penalty, thank you for the donation. So you don't want to go into that arena. That arena you don't want to go into. Okay, so anytime you're on your bike, your helmet must be on with buckle fastened. Do not ride without a fastened helmet. I see that all the time. People are in so much of a hurry, coming out of the water, getting on the bike. They forget to fasten the helmet. They pass me as I'm standing there watching people coming out of transition with the helmet buckles flapping in the breeze. And as far as USAT is concerned, you don't even have a helmet on at that point. Because when you go over the handlebars, the first thing that's going to come off is your helmet. So if you don't have your helmet fastened, it's not on as far as we're concerned. You are disqualified. And that's a horrible thing. You come back to transition, you finish and you find out you don't even have a race result because you're out of the race. So make sure you got that on and fastened. Put it on before you even get on the bike, that's for sure. ITU requires that you fasten and buckle that helmet when you touch the bike. We're not that stringent in USA Triathlon. But you're disqualified at ITU if you touch your bike without your helmet on and fastened. Really, a little bit different rule set. But you can't get on it otherwise. Okay. USAT officials may inspect your helmet for a CPSC sticker. This is really important, really important. We can't allow helmets out in the course that aren't consumer product safety certified, because there's a lot of knockoff helmets. People come up to me and they say, oh man, what a great deal I just got. I just bought an LPG helmet, or name an expensive helmet, Mickey. I just drew a blank. Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. They just bought this great new expensive Aero helmet, whose name we can't think of, on eBay for $12.99, that normally goes for $400. And they thought it was the greatest deal in the world. Come to find out, it's a knockoff. It's a cheap plastic shell with no protection ability at all, and it's not allowed in USAT competition. You have to be able to drop a steel ball from, I forget, 6 feet, 8 feet, like a 2-pound steel ball, and it's supposed to bounce off the helmet and not crack. And these will crack like an eggshell. This biggest protection you've got, you can see my scar here, I went over the handlebars on a broken look pedal on a hard climb, and if it wasn't for my helmet, I would have gotten a lot worse than this gash. I could have been in the hospital for a very long time. So we're really concerned about helmets. You must wear a CPSC approved helmet in competition. Older helmets may have a Snell or an ANSI rating. I can't imagine why you'd be wearing a helmet that old. Those are like 1982, 83, 84 helmets. You can go to Walmart and buy a helmet for $12 that's CPSC rated. So what we're really concerned about is the great deal you got on eBay for a Louis Jarneau that normally goes for $199 and you got it for $12, and you're wondering why it was such a great deal. It's because it's a knockoff made in China that is not going to do you any good if competition. We'll talk about this in the youth rule set, but you'll never see me wear an Aero helmet ever. They look cool, but they have a tendency to snap your neck. If you catch that point on a fall, it's going to snap your neck horribly, and on a youth, it's going to kill you. So we don't allow youths to ever wear an Aero helmet. I know they look good, but I would never wear an Aero. I'm not that good to wear an Aero helmet anyway. I'm really not that fast. The little time it would save me, so we're concerned about that. We see some really bizarre helmets, and I can never figure it out, because you can go to Walmart and for like $15 you can buy a CPSC certified helmet. And it's the only protection you really had. You're wearing Lycra, your skin's exposed, you're not going to get any protection from that. This is the only protection you've got. For people to shortchange themselves on a helmet blows my mind. I just can't believe it. And I'm not trying to scare you on the Aero helmets, it's just something I would never wear. I know they look cool, and if you really can get away with wearing an Aero helmet and you think it helps your time, that's fine. Just make sure that it's CPSC certified. A time trial helmet's just not something I like to do. They must have CPSC stickers, older helmets, Snell or ANSI, and there are absolutely no exceptions. On the run, you're required to wear your bib number. In case the timing system fails, whatever, they want to see that bib number on your front, wear it visible. I'm going to talk a little bit about number altercation. You'll see a rule called number altercation. And people are always concerned, well, I had to cut my number to fit it under the seat, or I had to do this or that. What we mean by number altercation is if you take a 101 and make it a 404. That's a number altercation. Cutting the number doesn't mean anything. We're worried about changing your number. Wearing a number that's not yours or actively changing your number. No shirt is required for male competitors. We get that all the time. Male will come up and say, do I have to wear a shirt? Nope, you can have bare torso in USAT competition. Not in ITU, but in USAT you can do that. Absolutely no personal audio devices. If we see earbuds, we're considering that that's a device. I don't care if they're in your ears or not, because I can't follow you around the course and see when or when you don't put them in. So if you are wearing earbuds, you are going to get a penalty. Now, I need to talk about this, because what we're seeing more and more as race directors is, what's the penalty for wearing a headset? 2 minutes. Then I'm going to wear a headset. I don't care about the 2 minutes. That tells me that you're going to wear it regardless. So as a race director, not as an official, I'm going to follow the rules. I'm going to give you a 2-minute penalty. If you come to my venues, I'm going to tell my officials I'm going to disqualify for earbuds. I've gotten to that point. Because when athletes start saying, you know what, what's the penalty for personal audio? 2 minutes, I'll take the 2 minutes. I'm wearing my personal audio device. No. Nope, you're disqualified. You're not in the race, you're not going to get your time, anything else. So be aware of that. It's starting to get to that point where people are saying, you know, for 2 minutes, I'll just wear the earbuds. So it's race director's discretion. Mickey's races, you'll just get a penalty. My races, I'm going to disqualify. And I'm going to have my officials disqualify, because I've got to get a handle on it. It's really rampant in Florida. It's really rampant. Everybody's wearing earbuds, and it's dangerous. I see them wearing them on the bike, blasting U2 while they're going down the road. They can't hear traffic or anything else. Very dangerous. So I'm saying, no, I'm sorry. It's one strike, you're out for the personal audio devices. So please be careful of those. If you're using a iPhone for navigation or something, it's one thing. You just don't want to have those headphones anywhere in vicinity that we can see. Okay. You know, Aunt Millie and Uncle Lester, I like to talk about them at least once per triathlon. Aunt Millie and Uncle Lester are really upset because they wanted to do their marketing or go to church or whatever, and they couldn't because all of us were out in the course tying up their streets that they pay good hard-earned tax money for. So they're very upset about that to begin with. And then when Aunt Millie and Uncle Lester go out in their front yard to do a little gardening at 5 o'clock in the evening and see water bottles and empty goop packets in their front yard, they're going to call the governor, or they're going to call the mayor, and they're going to say, I don't want these triathlete people out here anymore on their bicycles because they're pigs. So we're very hard on dropping trash. The only place you're allowed to drop trash on a course is within sight of an aid station. Within reasonable sight of an aid station. You want those poor volunteers to have to run a quarter mile to get your water bottle that you threw down. So anything you take out in the course, you have to take back with you. If you drop a water bottle out of your strap carrier and you don't know it, it's still a penalty. It's still a penalty. You dropped something, it's on the road, it's a dangerous hazard, and it's litter. So there is absolutely no littering. Never any glass. I want to mention that again. You can't accept assistance from anyone except those in race support or a race volunteer. Please don't flag down an official. You know, I got to share this story with you. And it always happens. There's always a part-time auxiliary officer or two that has to be recruited for a triathlon. And these guys and gals don't understand that it's not our job to worry about if somebody's got a flat tire or if somebody's a little cold. We're officials. We're there just to look at the rules. I was in North Carolina at the Half Max, which is a very large, huge race, South Carolina. And I was on a major highway with a lot of athletes and a lot of traffic, and I've got an officer going like this to me from the other side of the road, making me stop. My driver on the motorcycle saw that and freaked out and did a U-turn in front of traffic and cyclists. We put 4 cyclists in the ditch, and we forced 2 cars to go off the road. I'm lucky I'm still here to talk about it. And do you know what the officer wanted to tell me, the USAT official? That I better keep an eye on some of the athletes because they looked a little cold. Seriously. Seriously. So I'm really getting with officers and saying, unless it's a matter of life and death, that's not what we're here for. We're here just to observe the rules, and you're here to enforce traffic. And that's it. We got to keep those two separate. So please don't flag down a USAT official because you got a flat tire or because you need assistance unless it's serious. If you've got pains in your chest, if you need help, absolutely flag down anybody you can. Don't be surprised if a USAT official ignores you because we're used to that. Help me, I've got a flat tire. I need more oil for my chain. It's crazy what we hear out there. And we're not there for that, so we may ignore you. If we see that you're in desperate help, we will stop. So again, no personal audio devices in your ears. Have fun, treat others with respect and courtesy, and you'll be in good shape. What we're going to talk about now is how to challenge a penalty. Somebody asked, what happens when you get a penalty? Sometimes you don't know it. I always do. I know when I get a penalty, but sometimes you may not. At the penalty board, I'm standing there in a striped shirt. Look for the guy or the gal in the striped shirt. The red shirts are assistants. At a USA Triathlon venue, I'm only here to assist the guy or gal in the striped shirt. The striped shirt is the Lord on high. That person is the only person who's truly the official that day, the head official who is there to write penalties, to say yes or no. My job is to pass my penalties to the striped shirt. He or she's going to say yes or no on those penalties. We need 3 forms of ID. Male competitor on a black bike with a yellow helmet. Those are 3 forms of ID. Always need a gender, which can get you in trouble at some point, because sometimes it's a little difficult. But we try. So you need 3 forms of ID and what the person looked like. Then tell me what they did. Enter drafting zone from the rear, approach within 1 bike length, static for 42 seconds. That's a penalty. That means they didn't move through the zone in 15 seconds. Tell me what they did and tell me what the outcome was. No pass. That was the outcome. So those things have to be in the penalty. But when you come up to me and I'm wearing the striped shirt, you can challenge the penalty. Penalties have to be challenged within 1 hour of race end. Okay, you've got 1 hour to challenge that penalty. So you've got to come up to the official and say, wait a minute, read me the penalty. So let's say you got the penalty. I'm going to pick on you because you're looking at me straight. And you're wearing exactly what you were wearing race day. You happen to be wearing jeans and a black shirt. Strange athlete, but that's what you did. And we recorded you as a female athlete wearing a pink top with purple bottoms. The penalty is thrown out summarily. So you've challenged the penalty and you've won because they weren't. Now, and this happened, and I overturned it, and I've regretted it ever since. Kat brought me a penalty on one of Mickey's races where the athlete challenged it. And the penalty was male athlete, number 172, those were right, on a GR felt. And Kat couldn't remember green, gray, green, gray, green, gray, green, gray. I think it was gray. So she wrote gray. The athlete challenged me and I overturned the penalty because we had the bike color wrong. My bad. I never should have done that. I should have gone to her original penalty where she wrote GR and said, do you have a GR bike? And yes, he did. He wanted to get out of the penalty because we had one piece of information wrong on a typo. That's not going to fly anymore. That was a typographical error. He knew he deserved the penalty. I made a very bad call as a head official and did not supporting the penalty. It was a very bad call. So we will overlook that and we'll go back to the original scribblings of the official that wrote the penalty. All right. For whatever reason, you're in a big hurry and you get out of Dodge and you didn't know you got a penalty, you didn't care you got a penalty, you went back home and you looked at the race results and you saw that you got a penalty and you're really upset because you didn't deserve it. After all, you're you. and you don't deserve those penalties. So what do you do? What do you do from that point on? You go to the USAT website and you look on how you can formally challenge a penalty. You want a hearing on that penalty, and you're going to file sort of a grievance on the penalty to see if you can get it overturned, okay? You object to the penalty. You have to be very clear of your facts. Make sure that you know what you got penalized for. Make sure you know why you're objecting to it. Make sure what you're objecting to. If you're objecting to a drafting violation, you're wasting your time and your money, because there's no way you're going to get out of it unless the forms of ID were very wrong. So I would want the penalty sent to you, which we're willing to do. So you can see, okay, well, that sounds like me. Yes, I was wearing a black top with jeans, and I was on a gray felt. Sounds like me. And if it's a drafting penalty, there's no way that the commissioner or the commission is going to overturn it. The board that reviews these penalties will do that. You have to send in $100 and look at the penalty. If you truly believe you're innocent, you may be able to be proven so. You have to make sure it's worth your time. If rankings are involved and everything else, that may be. The thing you have to keep in mind is officials don't write penalties because it's good for their health. They write penalties because you did something wrong. So typically you're not going to get out of a penalty by challenging it, but if you truly believe that you did nothing wrong and you are innocently convicted of this heinous crime of a 2-minute penalty, you can challenge that. If you are challenged with a penalty that says unsportsmanlike, that's going to be a hard thing to overcome, because it's going to be an official's, it's kind of like trying to challenge the word of an officer. Somebody saw you do something, you said you didn't do it, prevailing stripes usually win in a case like that. But you're free to do that. You're free to challenge any penalty that comes forth. First thing you do is try to challenge it at the race, if you can get it within the time frame. Otherwise, you can challenge it after, you do with an email chain and everything else you need to do. Everything you need to know about USA Triathlon is right there, www.usatriathlon.org. You can download the competitive rules. It's about 80-some pages, if I'm not mistaken. It's actually good reading, it really is. It made me a better triathlete. I got into officiating because one day I thought, man, I don't even know what the rules are. That's probably why I'm getting these penalties. So I downloaded the rules and figured out, so that's what these guys and gals are doing out there. They're taking a look at these rules. That makes sense to me. And then I became an official. So I highly encourage you to do that. For those of you that have children, no youth, I do want to talk about this real quickly, because the board of directors at USA Triathlon just passed youth rules. This is the first time I think Mickey's seeing this. We're getting serious about youth because we want to groom them to be good triathletes. And if you let them do anything they want to do up till age 16, they're not becoming very good triathletes. Youth rules are in place. Youth must be members of USAT. We do not allow aero helmets at all for youth. If that point hits the pavement and snaps a youth neck, they're dead. Time and time again. Their necks can't sustain. We don't have the musculature and the spinal integrity that we do as adults. So we do not allow any aero helmets for youth. We won't even allow them on the course for that. We won't allow disc wheels for youth. Why is that? Because a 150-pound athlete on a bike is one thing, and a 60-pound athlete on a bike in the wind is another. That's a sail, and it's going to push them all over the road. Bikes must comply to USAT rules. No track bikes, front and rear brakes if manufactured, but we do allow the back brake, like when we were kids, you could push the chain backwards to stop. But they must have a freewheeling rear wheel, which means they can stop pedaling and the bike's going to continue to coast. No parents in the transition area after the initial setup. After the initial setup, there's no parents allowed. Youth will incur penalties for breaching youth rules just like adults, except it's 1 minute, 2 minutes disqualification. Participatory categories are allowed, but I'm telling my race directors, do you really want that? Yes, I understand for 5, 6, 7 years old, but a 16-year-old, I would not want a participatory category. You want to groom them to be good athletes. Parents cannot override USA competitive rules. That's going to be the number one thing. No bare feet anywhere except coming out of the pool. You must wear shoes on the run, and you must wear shoes on the bike. Those are the big things for youth. So I wanted you to know this in case you have friends or someone who does have youth that they're going to be entering in USAT competition. This is going to allow a way for us to monitor that unless Mickey decides that his races are going to be participatory only. But then you're participatory, and you can range it. You can have a participatory up to 7 years old, and then the rest are over USAT rules. Officials will start to monitor this. We want the sport to be professional from youth on up, and we are hoping we're going to get a lot of youth involved, and we want them to feel like it's a professional event. They're going to see officials. We're going to be professional with them, but we want them to know that just like anything else they play like soccer, there's going to be officials out there and they're ready for them. So, yes?
Can they have training wheels on their bike?
Under participatory rules, yes. Not under USAT rules. No training wheels at all. So many race directors up till age 7 are allowing participatory, even though 6 to 16 is the range. They'll up to age 7, they'll do participatory, or maybe 8, and then from that point on, no training wheels. Yep. All youth can be kickstanded. This is most people think of when they think of officials. They're either going to be superheroes that are going to marshal that course like no other, and they're going to strike you down with ill will if you do anything wrong, or they're real nerds that are just really tacky about the rules. And we know these are the two kinds of people we're definitely not looking for. We're certainly not looking for police officers out in the course. Anybody that likes authority for the sake of authority, we do not allow to stay in the program. It's not what it's all about. It's about equity and fair play. We don't want you to not have a fair advantage because somebody else drafted on a 50-mile course 6 inches off somebody's bumper. That's not fair. That's not fair to you, because they do get a big advantage from that over a 50-mile course. So really what we're looking for is people that like fairness and integrity. So I'm showing the slide to you because everybody in this room is welcome to enter the officials program. Okay? There is a 3-race training period where you do your first race criterium. There is an open book examination which we send to you in advance. You work the race at no charge. You work 2 more races, and then you're a Cat 3 official, and then you're compensated for mileage and a small stipend for the race. It's not a career. I wish it was. It's not a career. But $100 a race is not going to make you rich, I can tell you that. It's just enough to pay your expenses and everything else. But we are looking for good people to do our races as officials, and I want you to keep that in mind because that's really what it's all about for USA Triathlon.